And we're back! Wow, after a nearly 7-week hiatus, 2 of those because of a delayed release date, we are finally reviewing Tales from the Pizzaplex number 7, Tiger Rock. Just as a reminder, even though this book is relatively fresh, I will blunder straight into spoiler territory. I review these stories as pieces of literature because they ought not to be immune to being judged as such. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. When a VR session allows Kai to see the Pizzaplex 10 years into the future, he encounters a shiny new addition to the animatronic cast, a rockin' tiger named, well, Tiger Rock. So when the character starts to act strangely aggressive towards him, Kai decides he's had enough and breaks away from the simulation. But despite being back in the real world, a number of unsettling occurrences makes Kai question whether he left at all, or if Tiger Rock followed him out. The moment the cover art for this one was revealed, the fan art poured forth like driver ants. This is amazing. I don't know if any of the prior Faz books' cover art inspired such a rapid response. And not only is this character's design pretty iconic, but those who were paying attention realized that he must have had some connection to the Mimic, that enigmatic specter that haunts this book series, and, in the eyes of some, security breach. But the story's finally here, so how is it? It's okay. First of all, it's pretty much set in stone at this point that the VR attraction is going to be the Tales equivalent of the Fright's time-traveling ball pit. I don't know, maybe they're not actually computerized simulations, but ghostly visions from Remnant injected into the glass or some bullshit like that. I'm not a theorist, okay? Secondly, let's talk about how this story interconnects with the rest of the series. Astrid and Nexi make a cameo appearance, and it's implied that Kai's session in the VR booth is what caused the power surge that deformed the doll. Some might call this interconnectedness cool, but I honestly don't think much of it. It's not difficult to reference stories within stories, and just because 2 stories are intertwined with one another, it doesn't actually mean the quality of those stories is changed in any way. Like some of you pointed out that Maya's disaster in the VR booth from Under Construction was directly referenced in the story Claustrophobia, as if you expected me to be wowed by it. Wow! You good now? But let's turn our attention back to Tiger Rock. We already know that a 2-eye-colored tiger's head resides within the storyteller tree, so it was pretty apparent that the character was going to be influenced, controlled, possessed, whatever, by the Mimic. And the connections are pretty solid. Tiger Rock's method of dispatching his victims involves ripping them apart limb from limb, just as we saw the Mimic do in the epilogues. And I did catch that when Kai was in the VR booth, running and hiding from Tiger Rock says something like,
"Hide and seek. I can play. I learned how to play long ago."
As if implying that it learned hide and seek from David back in the 70s? Interesting.
Interesting.
But I haven't even talked about the actual story. So yeah, Kai escapes the VR session, but Tiger Rock seems to follow him into his real life and haunt him in a number of horrifying ways. He sees a robot owl with 2 colored eyes, a robot cat with 2 colored eyes, a face in a clock that has 2 colored eyes. The stairs turn into escalators. His sister's stuffed animals try and tear his legs off. Ah! Okay, folks, come on. Did one of you co-authors drag on the Faz joint a bit too hard? You had such an iconic character design at your disposal, and this is how you chose to portray him? Owls, cats, and fucking Beanie Babies? Now granted, it's still technically the simulation, but now we're back to that whole is it real trope. Ugh. This is why reading these things is such a chore. A whole spaghetti junction of directions they could have gone with this story, and instead they chose to go off-roading on one of those runaway truck ramps. So Kai breaks free from the simulation, again, like for real this time, and he believes that now he's finally free from Tiger Rock. Until the last 4 paragraphs, when Tiger Rock literally jumps out of nowhere, rips off his arms for real, and then just runs off with them. Just fucks right off with them. Like Barney Rubble with his pebbles.
But I sure did gobble up your pebbles.
So is the mimic stealing dismembered body parts and crafting them into a corpse-like effigy of David so it can relive what it used to know? Sure, why not? Or maybe we'll never know because it'll never be explained. Yeah, this story was weird, good connections aside. I wasn't a huge fan. Next. Kane's research on brain hemispheres starts to apply in real life when he tries a new video game at the Pizzaplex that allows him to play as Orville Elephant with Montgomery Gator as support. But Kane suspects that Monty might be playing him in return when he emerges from the game carrying a brand new souvenir in the form of a horrifyingly familiar voice in his head. Okay, so let's go all the way back to Fazbear Frights number 2, Fetch. In my review for that book, I mentioned how authors will sometimes learn some esoteric scientific concept and not only incorporate it into the story, but explain it to the readers within the context of that story. I mentioned that I do it myself, so I can't really fault my fellow writers for doing it at all. But here, in this goddamn story, Kane gives his 12th grade oral report on brain hemispheres and which side of the brain controls what parts of your body. And this goes on for 9 pages. 9 pages of this character just talking about brain hemispheres and the research and the science behind it. And you just know, reading it, that it's going to incorporate into the conflict somehow. Yeah, we get it. Montgomery Gator is going to manifest as a voice in his head and start controlling his thoughts and actions. Just finish your goddamn oral report and get to the part where you share brain hemispheres with a fucking alligator. The fact that I had to say those words in context of an official Five Nights at Freddy's book just goes to show how far these stories have fallen off. So, okay, Kane shares headspace with Montgomery Alligator. We've got kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. Kind of, sort of, not really. But he's about to find out that sharing headspace with an alligator can leave quite the mental crater. Kane is Monty, rated PG-13. So what does the split personality of Montgomery Gator do to this kid? It basically turns him into a sarcastic bitch. He thinks up insults and petty observations and sometimes says them out loud. It compels him to throw food in the cafeteria. It makes him second guess baseball pitches when he's up to bat. You know, real scary stuff. Y'all really ladled from the darkest depths of your souls with this one. And of course the actual setup is super convoluted. So he's playing a video game where his support character can actually get inside his head and learn his moves because he's controlling Orville with the right side of his brain, the conscious side, but Monty is controlled by the left unconscious side of his brain. But then he accidentally breaks some brainwave reading light that actually allows Monty to move in? What are we doing? This isn't even plankton palsy anymore. This is a plankton pandemic.
Crash!
Fazbear Entertainment is 2 steps away from creating an honest-to-goodness wall writer, and they're using it to give kids DID. And it all comes down to the shocking conclusion when Monty declares that he's getting bored of Kane and compels him to cut his own skull in half with a table saw. This story was ridiculous, and it further goes to show just how reluctant these writers are for some reason to portray the actual animatronics as legitimate physical antagonists. Does Scott not want any stories written about the actual characters? Is that why we've been having to settle for weird sci-fi with only middling references to Five Nights at Freddy's? I don't know, but it's baffling now and foolish in retrospect. Let's hope the next story makes up for it. Faz tats. Now, granted, we already jumped the Faz shark with the Faz Kids at Play statue, so I'm not super disgusted at the inclusion of Faz tats. But let's try and recount this anyway. Danny tries to impress a girl at school who has a tattoo on her arm with tattoos of his own, but his obsession threatens to hurt him in more ways than one. And how do I come up with a compelling summary for the story? You all know the formula at this point. Kid makes a dumb decision with a Faz product, and Faz fucks himself in the end. And how exactly does he go about attaining the Faz tats? Hold on, I actually have to look at my script. Nope. I can't say it. I would rather shit my pants on camera than say this upcoming sentence. But here we go. Super intelligent flying nanobots used to wrap Christmas presents that burrow into his flesh and carve whatever tattoo designs he sees up into his skin on command. You know, it's been way too long. I haven't suffered any head injuries for 7 weeks. Time to break that streak. I'm not even gonna write anything more in my script. I'm just gonna let this clip from a prior review speak for itself. Tony had written a super awesome story based on a true life mystery, and his friends had taken all the realism out of it. They'd transformed the story from something believable, and therefore creepily eerie, into something utterly bizarre, and therefore not the least bit disturbing. Why do I even bother making scripts? The jokes just write themselves. But that's just the setup. How's the actual story? Danny's another simp protagonist, and he ingests nanobots into his flesh and cuts up his own skin to impress this girl, and demeans his friends and neglects his family in the process. Real wonderful stuff. And the girl named Daisy is obviously using him to get more access to body art, so when Danny realizes this, that she doesn't like him the way he likes her, he snaps and kills himself via excessive tattooing. No, I can't do it again. There's this tonally bizarre sequence where Danny basically slices and dices himself up via the tattoos. And he leaves a trail for Daisy to find. A trail of bits of his flesh in the shape of hearts and daisies. And at the end of the trail is his own heart sitting there in a puddle of blood. I'll give you points for creativity, co-authors. But I think that even the goth kids from South Park would call this dramatic.
Goth's darkness is nihilistic, whereas emo's is cynical.
It should come as no surprise that the bleeding heart, from its setup to its protagonist to its actual story beats, just came off more silly and indulgent than scary. These books must have really missed me because number 7 was just relentless with the absurdity. Welcome back to the Faz books, I guess. When's the next one coming out? October. Christ. And it's the B72 one. Oh joy. Can't wait to experience another controversy, but in real time. I'm forgetting something though. Something of indispensable importance. Meh, must have been nothing. See you all next time. I'm kidding. The epilogue. So, the mimic escapes its confinement, which renders the previous story pretty much pointless. And Kelly and Lucia... Is it Lucia or Lucia? I think Lucia if she's Italian, and Lucia if she's Spanish. I'm going to stick with Lucia because it sounds more natural. They get the idea to hide in mascot suits to trick the mimic into thinking that they're inanimate objects. It seems to work until Kelly freaks out, and the mimic, wow, this is actually pretty gnarly. It unzips her mascot suit, it climbs into the suit, it integrates itself with it, crushing and tearing up Kelly's body in the process. Damn. This epilogue might be overstretched and repetitive, but it does not hold back from the tension and the violence. And the mimic is an interesting enough antagonist to keep me invested. It's already better than the Stitch Wraith saga. Not perfect, but it's a welcome respite from the weirdness of the mainline Tales from the Pizzaplex. Well, thanks for tuning in again. I'll see you all in October when the next one comes out. Until then, take care.